Another FunBelt Podcast. We're at the midway point. Dusty Thibodeau, Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of HowlRazor.com, Shane Metlin of the Heisman Trophy Voting Society, also of the Daily News Record. Guys, it was another great weekend of FunBelt football. Shane got to see a good old ass whooping. I got to see another heartbreak. Troy got a shutout. Arkansas State somehow survived the bye. What'd y'all see this week?
Man, I watched more Sunbelt football, like back to back to back, than I've watched in a long time. And it was glorious. Starting with that JMU goal or Eagles game that I thought was going to be like a barn burner, and it was a one-sided barn burner for the Dukes. It looked like the Eagles had no idea what they were doing on offense or defense. It's like there was open wide receivers all day long for Jordan McLeod to pick people off with. It was just extraordinary how bad the Eagles looked against JMU on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, to your first point, Tibbs and I were talking before you got on here about how it's a much different scenario. Early in the season, I'm trying to see if I can see any of like 14 different games going on in a 6-hour window, and now they're all staggered very nicely with you get a chance to see almost everybody in the league on a given day. So that part's cool. Beyond that, you're right. Georgia Southern did not play a good game. They didn't play a game that they're capable of playing. JMU also played their first real complete game of the season. First time where they were kind of clicking on all three phases, really until it was put away. I mean, they didn't score in the fourth quarter. The game was already decided at that point. So, I mean, it was a very, very good JMU performance, but also one of those Georgia Southerns where they go from looking like they could beat anybody in the conference to every once in a while having those games where, like Wisconsin, where they make a ton of mistakes and it really hurts them.
Yeah, I believe 2 picks from Bryn. Bryn has the most picks of anybody in the Sun Belt. But Tibbs, it felt like to me, and maybe I'm getting paranoid that maybe I'm overthinking it, but it feels like Kurt Signetti heard us talking about how weak, or maybe there was a weak point in the secondary of the Dukes, and it just made him angry. And he heard us saying, well, if anybody's going to exploit that weakness, it's going to be Georgia Southern. And Signetti just put out a cigarette in somebody's eye and said, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to show FunBelt Podcast just how big of idiots they are.
Well, I'm going to add some more message board material for him this week. Watching James Madison, they didn't even look like they were trying. I mean, they looked effortless in that game.
I know.
And it was boring to watch. It was like watching a high school Pee Wee football or a college versus a JUCO. It was bad football. And by that, I mean, it just wasn't entertaining because it was a blowout, one-sided affair all the way through.
Yeah. And there wasn't competition on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball. It was just all Dukes. And it was like, you can kind of, if you looked at the team side by side, you'd say, all right, well, physically, they don't seem any different. They don't look faster or bigger or stronger than each other. I mean, they look equal, but man, it's like everybody from the Dukes knew their roles, knew exactly what they were doing, knew that every play was going to be a success, and it was. It was just a master class of football down in Harrisonburg. And it was a kind of a joy to watch in some regards, but right, Dusty, it was also a big snore.
It was definitely a game where after suffering their first loss in Statesboro last year, when they got that top 25 ranking, and then they go down to Georgia Southern and immediately lose. They're out of the rankings for the rest of the year. That's the first of 3 straight. That was as locked in as JMU has been in a long time. Like you said, everybody knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing, and everybody executed their role because they wanted that game really badly.
Yeah, and the streamers were flowing, and the Dukes, undefeated in the Sun Belt, literally knocking on the door of the AP Top 25. Well deserved. I'm still pissed.
Here's the most telling stat, though, of that game, Jeremy.
Are you
Georgia
interrupting
Southern.
me? Wait. Did you interrupt me before I went on a wild, angry, furious tangent about the AP Top 25s? Because if you did, that was wise. Because
Yeah, I did. I wanted to save our listeners from hearing you bitch about that yet again, week after week after week after week.
Yeah. I'm going to bitch again tonight. I'm going to do it.
I just voted in the preseason basketball poll, so now I'm part of the problem, according to Jeremy.
I'm going to find
Was there any mid majors in your top 25 poll?
There were.
Oh,
Gonzaga does not count.
Gonzaga doesn't count. St. Mary's, do they count?
Yeah. I think so.
Maybe.
Charleston.
Who else you got?
Charleston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Florida Atlantic, of course.
at
number 8.
Yeah.
Memphis probably doesn't count.
No.
I think Memphis does. I think they do. I mean, if you're in
you have blue glasses on when you say that.
By the way, hey, listen, do not let anybody from Memphis hear you say that, because they will take that as ammunition. They think like I have friends that live in Memphis, and they were talking so hard about Kansas and what was going on with Kansas, as if Kansas and Memphis are in the same tier in terms of basketball lore and history. And I was like, what are you guys even talking about? Why do you give a shit what's going on with Kansas and NCAA?
Well, a few free throws in 2008, they might have had something to say about that.
Speaking of which,
Tib,
while we're on a basketball kick, though,
okay, all right.
Kansas, I know that hits close to home for you, Shane. The 2017-2018 season did not exist for the Kansas Jayhawks. Unfortunately, there were no mid-majors and especially no Sun Belt impacted by that decision to delete history, but they will have to take their banner down.
Yeah. I've always wondered about this. This is not like a Homer thing either. Like, I've always wondered, people always say like the banner's got to come down. And this applies to Louisville or whoever. Like, does it really? I mean, does the NCAA really get to tell you how to decorate your building?
That is a good question. I know Memphis.
I mean, I know it's not going to be in the record books, but like, do they really get to tell you like what you can and can't hang up?
Put an asterisk on it.
I wonder if you could put up a banner that phrases it differently, like just a little few words twisted around.
Years played in Final Four.
Yes.
SBC Eastern Champion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Kings of the Midwest region or whatever. Like, just like how JMU did it.
Yeah, you can still stamp out a ring, and you can still apparently do those things.
Bringing us back to the football game, though. Bringing us back.
Thank you.
The telling stat: Georgia Southern ran 88 plays of offense, averaging 4.2 yards per play. The mighty Dukes, 54 plays, averaging 7.1 yards. They were whooping.
Yeah. Wasn't much of a contest.
The next game on the schedule, I did not get to see a single bit of this, and I am upset by it.
I saw a lot of it, so I can fill you in.
The Troy Trojans.
Yeah.
Went to New York, moved the Sun Belt 2-0 over the Black Knights of Army with the 19-0 shutout win. That's all I got for you. I really didn't see any of the game, so I couldn't tell you what happened. I know that their kicker went off because he was Sun Belt Conference Player of the Week for special teams. I think he was like 50 of 50 on field goals or something like that to get them where they were.
Yeah, the story of that game was, one, it was a miserable, rainy weather game. So really, whoever held on to the ball, who could manage enough of that tackum on their hands to keep on to the ball, was going to win. I think Army dropped it about 3 or 4 times. Troy had a moment where they ended up having a disastrous, well, wasn't too disastrous, didn't result in 8 points, but they had a big fumble. But it was really Troy's defense was the story on that. Guys, in the last 3 games, Troy has given up a grand total of 10 points. 7 to South Alabama. Then the next week they give up 3 to the Arkansas State. Now 0 to Army. They are on track, gentlemen, to giving up negative numbers for their next game. How is this possible? It's like plus is minus and minus is plus. It's like we had the solar eclipse or the lunar eclipse, and it somehow changed the fabric of reality, time, and space. Troy's defense is for real.
I'll agree with that. I mean, the closest I saw of Troy's defense was the JMU game. And, you look at what JMU's done otherwise, putting up 30 points a game or more each time besides that. And, scores were tough to come by down there. Yeah. I mean, Signetti said, I thought field goals were really going to matter in this game. And that's the way it is in a Troy game. And you see, Army couldn't get on the board. Troy, gets better than normal production from their kicker. I think he struggled at times this year and, boots a few, including a 43-yarder. And that was all they needed with that defense.
I can't even identify exactly what schemes that they're doing well in that Troy defense. I tell you what they do well, just the fundamentals. Those guys don't miss tackles. When they hit you the first time, you're going down. It's none of this like, oh, I'm going to try to punt the ball out of your hands, or I'm going to try to shove you out of bounds, or I'm going to try to hit you so hard that you're out of the game. It's just a wrap-up tackle. These guys they don't mess around in Troy. Like, I don't know what the final stats were for Army, but they wrapped up that Army rush game. I mean, there's nobody running against Troy. We just talked about the two best defenses in the Sun Belt, JMU and Troy. They've already had their epic defensive match. Would not be surprised to see those two teams again in the championship.
It would be a little bit of a surprise
because
JMU would have to get some sort of
there might be some sort of yeah.
But
a game that does matter though for the East.
Yeah,
Marshall headed to the ATL to take on the Panthers. Cam Fancher, career day, 301 yards, one touchdown, 27 of 34. Not enough, though. He did win the head-to-head battle there against Darren Granger, but it just wasn't enough because it was Marcus Carroll. It was Granger's legs, not his arm, getting it done on the ground for three touchdowns there between the two of them. And they won it. 41-24. Georgia State. They might be for real, guys.
We spent so many minutes sort of degrading and putting down Georgia State because, after all, Georgia State always lets us down, right? We always say, well, this is the year that Georgia State's going to be good. And then they're not good. They make us look like fools for supporting them. So we've been a little bit unfair to Georgia State. When they had trouble with Rhode Island, we're like, same old Georgia State. When they lost to who they lose to? Was it Georgia Southern?
It was Troy.
Yeah, then when they lost to Troy, oh yeah, that's right. I just mentioned it. Damn it. When they lost to Troy by 7 points, or only scored 7 points on Troy, we're like, I guess there's just something wrong with Georgia State. Turns out Troy's pretty good. Georgia State, without JMU being able to claim that title again, Georgia State's back on track to being in the Sun Belt East race.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame for if you're a Georgia State fan that you ended up with that Troy matchup because I mean, depending on who you draw in the West, like might end up being the deciding factor when who ends up going to the championship game if JMU's not available for that. But Georgia State looks like a team that can do some damage and maybe possibly play in a championship game right now.
Great quarterback, great running back. Kind of like what Appalachian State has. What does Georgia State have that Appalachian State doesn't, Tibbs?
Darren Granger.
Yeah, but Joey Aguilar's not bad.
No, but I think it's the reliance and the stability of Darren Granger. he's. I'm scared to see if he ever gets it put together where he can pass and run in the same game. I feel like he's been one-dimensional every game, but it's been enough to propel the Panthers to that victory that he's been able to either pass or run. This past week, it was on the running attack than more so than the passing. So it's kind of scary to see what would happen if he were to put it all together.
Is he one-dimensional because possibly defenses have to pick or choose one thing to stop, and they can't shut him down with both?
Oh, no doubt. And then if you focus on Darren Granger running, he's going to air it out or hand it off to Carroll, who's just as good of a running back as Darren Granger would be.
That's top drawer analysis, Dusty.
On the top drawer, I get to hang out with our former show guests, the Sicko Committee. The commish made his way to San Marcos to watch the Warhawks play.
Charming in person?
He was.
Oh, okay.
He gave great analysis.
Ooh.
It was fantastic. We talked a lot of business. We talked a lot of football. We talked a lot about the committee. Unfortunately, we had to talk about Joey Hobart of Texas State. The guy was everywhere. 10 receptions, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the game winner with 41 seconds left. ULM did not play well. Texas State offensively did not play well. They just had that one extra score. And the real 2 different plays in there that were the difference maker. Warhawks finally get a long reception to their tight end, but he's chased down, pushed out around the 4. That eventually turns into a turnover on downs where the Warhawks can't punch it in from a yard out. And then the other big play was Joey Hobart just running a little curl route wide open. And I'll say this, the other big takeaway I have from that game, TJ Finley hums that ball in for those receivers. They might have a lot of drops, but I put a lot of those on TJ Finley because you hear nothing but thuds when it's hitting the pads.
You know, when coaches talk about quarterbacks, they sometimes talk about throwing a catchable ball. And that I don't like bringing it back to Arkansas State because that's what I usually do. But we I don't mind doing it. We had a couple quarterbacks that started earlier in the season that really hummed the ball, and they would reach the receiver, but it was uncatchable. It was like catching a rocket. And so it looked like everybody was having these drops, and they were. I mean, to be fair, they were dropping the ball, but they weren't easy to catch balls. You bring in Jalen Rayner, and he throws something called a soft ball. Like he could throw it long, but it lands like in your hands, like somebody just tossed an egg at you, and you just catch it. And I haven't really studied TJ very much because he's making a lot of plays. Is he one of these guys though that just hurls it a little bit too hard?
And he has a funky arm motion. Like it's not quite sidearm, but it's not over the top like a traditional quarterback throw. It's kind of a 3/4 arm.
Is it like he's throwing darts, like kind of just
almost like if you didn't know any better, you'd say that he had an injured shoulder, but they were like, no, that's just how he throws.
So let me ask you this, Tibbs. What is the bigger storyline on this? That ULM has now made their minds into a sunless place, having lost miserably these very close games, and they really just are now coma walking through the rest of the season, hoping not to get hurt again? Or is the bigger story that Texas State, even though weren't on their game, didn't play well in front of the home crowd, still managed to pull out the victory? Isn't that the thing you do when you're a mature winning team? You know, they had the tough loss against Louisiana. They could have easily folded up the tent once they realized that ULM wasn't going to lay down for them, and they found a way to win. So what's the bigger story? That the Warhawks are maybe the toughest luck team we've seen in the Sun Belt in a long time, or that Texas State is mature beyond its years?
Chief Brave Spirit was definitely in attendance at that game. and I don't know what else we can do to try to unpiss him off.
Yeah,
because that's the only way that you can really say that you lose. The difference of you being 2-4 and 4-2 is what, like 4 points, 5 points at the most. I don't even think it's that many. But the fact that the Warhawks are sitting at 2-4, they're not out of it. Now they're not necessarily in the race, but they're not out of it yet.
Not necessarily.
And so I think that the bigger story here, was the support of Texas State. I've never been to a Sun Belt Conference game where there was that kind of environment, that kind of crowd, that kind of support. The amazing light show that Texas State has, as their SID said, yeah, that was our investment from last year, but it was a pretty cool investment. Yeah, I really don't know what the bigger story is, because I guess I've grown numb to the Chief Brave spirit just wreaking havoc all over the Warhawks year after year.
Oh, and you just have to feel for the Warhawks, because they're not playing terrible football. It's just they're not able to seal the deal. That's twice in 2 out of 3 games where they have not been able to seal the deal.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit telling on the teleconference today when Bowden's asked kind of how do you rally the troop? How do you get the guys back after like tough losses like this? And he basically kind of laughed like I don't know. I mean, he ended up giving the standard correct answer after that, but his initial reaction was just to like laugh. Like it's just kind of unbelievable where they're at right now with the bad luck. For Texas State,
yeah.
I mean, I think the thing was, you look at the box score, ESPN, how they figure out their QBR. Let me pull that back up.
Oh God,
TJ Finley, 26.7. Like it was one of the worst in the conference. And like, but he makes the winning plays. I mean, his stats are terrible, but he led that drive to win the game. And I think you got to give him credit, kind of being the gamer in that regard.
Yeah, and I thought when Jataris Evans had that 76-yard pick six that made the score 20-9 with I think 6.5, 7 minutes left in the game, I was like, it's going to be close, but I think we got us a win here, and I was wrong.
Yeah, you dared to hope, you dared to dream. Now, let me ask you this: it sounded like to me like there was a little bit of drama and brouhaha. Maybe some hijinks that happened at the end of that game. Did you just see any of that?
I did. It all started after the pick six. As a matter of fact, there was bottles, cans, everything else under the kitchen sink being thrown at the ULM bench. Surprisingly, there was no stadium personnel there. There was no security there. However, they came out of the woodworks once apparently a ULM player allegedly threw a article that had been tossed towards his direction back at said student. Then he was promptly removed by the Texas State University deputized police.
Now, I heard that maybe that item that had been hurled back broke a nose. That was one thing. That our guy Keith Cordello. Did I get it right? Did I say it right?
No, Kev.
No, not even close.
Kev Cardello? It's Cardello, though, right?
Chardillo.
He was on it. I mean, he was reporting on it. He was there. He was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an ugly scene. When you have the student section right behind the opposing team, I personally, I think that's where the student section belongs. But it's always going to be a magic recipe for that kind of chaos. So,
it is, but is it a story that we're talking about if a student had hit a player in the face and made the player unavailable to play the rest of the game?
Oh, I do think
is that a story?
Yeah,
because to me, it was not the officials that kicked out the ULM player. It was these university police that were nowhere to be found when the incident was actually happening.
Oh.
And so does it change the outcome of the game that ULM doesn't have their preseason all-conference receiver on the field? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, because I don't think he had that many receptions or even targets all night long. But you never know what that does for ULM, knowing that they do have a speedster that has steady hands that they could have thrown the deep ball to for that last drive.
Wow, Dusty, you know what? You probably had mentioned it, but I didn't realize it was campus police that had done the escorting and not the officials. I thought the officials had said, "You got to
No.
get out of here." Wow.
When have the Sunbelt officials ever seen anything?
I mean, and I don't know that it's even their job to necessarily know what's going on behind the benches
Yeah.
on the sidelines. You know, to defend the officials a little bit. That's kind of like not even where they're trained to be looking at that point. But you know,
But shouldn't you
can't
with
if
the-
you're a player, you can't do that.
You can't
just know
retaliate.
you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, the players have to know, and they have to have been told that, like, you know, they're going to be held to a different standard than the drunk idiots in the stands. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Tibbs, like, you know, they had a trident thrown not long ago, and they're not prepared for like a little bit of mischief. Like, it's, you know.
By the way, they would show the crowd, and there's always a student out there with a trident.
Yeah.
There's several students or student groups that now have tridents there. It's fantastic. I wish I would have captured a picture of it.
Yeah, but I think you have a point, though, that, you know, there's already been a little bit of an issue. Maybe have the security ready to step up if something like this starts to brew.
Yeah, so San Marcos are those fans getting kind of a reputation for being rowdy rabble rousers? I mean, already they get in trouble with the band member allegedly throwing the trident or whatever it turned out to be. Now you got San Marcos student section fans throwing crap at the ULM bench and then getting some of it thrown back at them. The San Marcos, are they going to become the bad boys of the Sun Belt?
Apparently. I mean, I guess when you float the river all day long and you have a few too many Bobcat loggers there,
victory has gone to their heads, Dusty. Oh my God, what has happened? They used to be such nice, docile people, and now suddenly they've become like Georgia Southern circa 2014, just insane with windlust.
There was nobody chugging beers on buses.
So I hear we have a Tuesday night game. I thought last week was going to be the only week, but I guess we're just going to keep doing this.
Why not?
I don't know. I like them all on Saturday. I don't like Tuesday.
Get off my lawn, Jeremy.
That is some kind of old man thinking, I guess. And you know what? Last Tuesday night game was fun to watch.
Here's the preview, though, of this game. Southern Miss heads south to Mobile to take on South Alabama. I know that South Alabama has had a couple of wins here recently.
Yeah.
But I still can't buy into them. I still can't really believe that they're back and capable of being the Jaguars that we all anticipate. They should win this game, but I think it's going to be an ugly win. And one where Frank Gore Jr. again goes over his 100 yards. I'd even be willing to say 150. But I think the key thing is, what do the Jaguars really look like? Are they actually going to try to open up the run game with Webb in the backfield, or are they going to try to air it out with Bradley behind center?
You know, I think Southern Miss has one of the worst defenses in the Sun Belt. And I think after having played ULM and finally gotten that taste of windlust, as we mentioned before, the 50 points they poured onto the Warhawks.
55, get it right.
50 plus points they poured onto the Warhawks. You know, they had the bye week to rest, to get well. You know, I just feel like Carter Bradley, that connection to, oh God, I forget the wide receiver's name, but that's a great connection that they have with each other. I think they air it out all night against Southern Miss. Defensively, I know you said that you thought Frank Gore might go for 150. I think all they have to do is key in on Frank Gore, limit him to like 70, and they win this game easily. I think by the second quarter, the announcers are already talking about something about what's going on with Michigan.
Colorado, get it right.
I didn't want to say Colorado and sound like a cliche, but it's true. They're going to talk about Colorado.
I think you're right. This feels like a blowout. I mean, I think South Alabama's getting better. We kind of were like, what's the matter with them after the JMU game? At this point, I think playing JMU to 8 points at home is like a respectable showing, and they follow that up with a blowout. I think South Alabama's getting it figured out to some degree, and Southern Miss is just going the opposite direction.
Just remember, though, South Alabama hosts the Raging Cajuns next week.
Ooh.
So are they looking ahead for what could be a pretty big Western Division game?
Yeah, I think the Cajuns have a pretty big game this week, too. So there's going to be a lot of implications going on. But Tibbs, I know that you're jaded. You've been hurt so many times by the Jaguars. I don't know who's hurt you more, the Warhawks or the Jags. But
the Warhawks. I mean, it's 40 plus years.
But the Jags, I do feel, I agree with Shane. I kind of feel like they're kind of figuring it out. They're a little like Georgia State used to be right now, where they're just really piddling along in the first half of the season. Like they forgot that they could practice in the spring and the early summertime, and now they're just finally getting it all together. So I think this is going to be one of those games where we see the old South Alabama come back, and they're pretty darn good.
And they're wearing red helmets.
Are they wearing the red helmets?
Yeah, the red
With
the red
script?
kid mark and red South Alabama on the other side, red stripe down the middle, red tops, white
Wow.
pants.
Man, you're on top of this.
Fashion police in full effect.
By the way, I hate talking about Power 5 football when we're talking about Sunbelt, but did you catch any of that Colorado Stanford game?
No, but I did see that Dion has made his way onto Saturday Night Live as a spoof character.
All I know is that I went to sleep at halftime with them. Like there was 29-0. I was like, okay, well, this is a crap game. Stanford's like 1-4. They're about to be 1-5. Wake up and it's like Prime is talking about how his team hates football, and somehow Stanford has a overtime win. Wow, I really missed something there.
Something else you missed, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Women's soccer ticking along.
Oh,
South Alabama currently leads the standings 5-0-2 in Sunbelt Conference action. Old Dominion 5-1-1.
Yeah.
Jimmy Mad 3-0-4. Georgia State 4-2-1. ULM 3-1-3, baby.
Yeah, I believe as Arkansas State and ULM played to a 2-2 tie. I believe it was yesterday or the day before.
That is correct. Two winless teams in Sunbelt Conference action, Troy and Coastal Carolina, each of which 5-2.
Yeah, why is it surprising to me that Coastal is not a good soccer program? It seems to me that Coastal would be a great soccer program. Like that's in the heart of soccer country. But I don't know. I guess maybe I know nothing about soccer, so I don't get it, which is fine.
You do know nothing about soccer, but you do know about plugs, promos, and parting shots, Jeremy.
Oh, I do. Yeah. All right. Yeah. You want me to go first on that?
No, we'll let Shane because his team had another blowout win.
Shane deserves it. Yeah.
Okay. Parting shot.
Oh,
I feel like this just came to my head, but Jeremy, maybe part of your thought that the Chanticleers should be good at soccer is that seems like it would be like a English Premier League mascot logo type of thing.
yes. It does seem to have that quality to it. Yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
That's a little bit of a parting shot. I'd also just go with the normal standard plug to read dnronline.com/sports and, read all the good Sunbelt JMU coverage we have there.
Okay.
Jeremy, what do you have for us?
Well, all right. So last night, I was kind of stewing about the AP Top 25, which I do every Sunday night now, because it just makes me mad. You know, we keep hearing Sunbelt best group of 5 conference in football, best small conference in football, and we can't get anybody in the top 25, even though we have a team that went on the road, beat Troy, beat Virginia, beat Utah State, undefeated, just beat Georgia Southern, still can't get in. And I was kind of stewing about that. And the day before, I was listening to a show called Full Ride. Do you guys listen to the Full Ride with Chris Childress and Neuheisel? You guys
Only when I forget to change the channel.
I used to when I still had the satellite radio.
Yeah, I got the satellite. I was taking a long drive. It was for work. Flipped it on, so I was listening to it. I'm cruising along, and they start talking about Group of 5, which is fine. They usually do a good job with this, and they come up with this new thing, the Greisman, which is a parody of the Heisman, right? Greisman, I think, was some sort of Dr. John Greisman, some sort of urologist. I don't know. I forget what their justification was, other than it rhymes with Heisman. And there was like kind of ho-hoing about it. And, you know, these guys will never sniff the Heisman, you know, and they were kind of laughing about it. And they were being, you know, good sports, but it was aggravating to me. And like they had like 6 candidates, and 4 of them were from the Sun Belt. TJ Finley and Vidal and that wide receiver for South Alabama, just to name a few. But it was really aggravating for me to listen to this from these guys. Like, they've taken the achievements of these players, of these programs, of the fans that support it, and say, we're going to take them away from half of college football, and we're going to invent a little parody award for these guys because they're not part of the rest of the college football ecosystem here. So I kind of let that stew for a little bit. It's nothing I'm not accustomed to. I mean, this is sort of the condescension that the Group of 5 has had to endure for a long time. So then, like, I'm going through the Twitters last night, and there's like an account called PFF College, and they constantly like show like the leaders of college football. This guy is the leader in passing yards. This guy is the leader in punt returns. But it's never, this is the FBS leader in rushing. It's, this is the Power 5 leader in rushing. And they showed some guy from Notre Dame. I forget his name. Meanwhile, there are 3 guys ahead of him, including Vidal from Troy, another guy from Boise State, another guy from Toledo, that has more yards than this guy. But those yards don't count to PFF College. They don't give a shit. Those yards are meaningless to them. The only yards that had meaning were the ones accrued by the Power 5 guy. And it burned me. I'm like, this is week, what was it, 7? Half of these teams have played just as many Power 5 as the rest of these guys. What the hell is going on here? It made me think that maybe ever since Cincinnati had the gall to reach the college football playoffs, there seems to be a concerted effort amongst influencers in college football to take the Group of 5 down a peg. And I don't know, it's probably not a concerted effort. It's probably just paranoia on my part. But the more we keep separating the Group of 5 from the P5, no matter how many successes the Group of 5 has against the P5, the more it's going to be where we're just going to be rooting for 20 teams in the next 5 years. It's not fair to college football. It's not fair to the fans. And that is my parting shot. Are you guys still alive?
FunBeltPodcast.com, where you can find our full back catalog of all of our episodes, including Jeremy's endless rants to close out plugs, promos, and parting shots. And you can also click on the shop button. Guys, when I was at Texas State,
yes,
I had peoples say, I'm surprised you're not wearing a boob cat shirt.
And how would they say it? What was the tone? What was the undertone to that, Dusty?
I don't know.
Catch up
That
on?
means that there's people wanting a Boobcat t-shirt, and you can get yours
Okay.
at funbeltpodcast.com. Click shop, search for Boobcats, order them. They come in big sizes, so they'll fit over Jeremy's
Yeah.
egotistical, rambling, hot-aired self.
Hey, not
And that's
only
the only website I would recommend searching Boobcats on.
nice. Shane with the ending. Wow.